Never asked me for cookies
Okay,
before.
I've got the live stream notification, so it's happening.
All right. All right. Well, I am live here with Jonn Buzby.
Greetings, salutations, hello.
Jonn has been doing lately this thing simultaneously on YouTube and Facebook where he plays his music and sometimes takes requests. And that's how I kind of reconnected with him, because years ago, early 2000s, he sent me his first 2 CDs from his band Land of Chocolate. And then after that, I didn't hear anything. It's like everything, sometimes you kind of, sometimes you forget that, things, and you move on, if you don't have your, because I didn't know that you were still doing music. I just thought maybe there was the first 2 Land of Chocolates, and then, that was it.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a story behind it. And part of it is just life in general, that people moving in different directions.
Yes.
And it's just how it goes sometimes. So the bandmates on the second Land of Chocolate album, one of them moved up to Rochester, New York, one moved out to Asheville, North Carolina. And I started a different band called Damn Fine Coffee, but I kind of stayed away from the progressive outlets. I kind of kept it low key and
Right.
was just kind of doing my own thing. And when the pandemic hit, that became pretty much impossible to do band work. So I kind of started doing my own thing with a solo live stream called Tuesday Tuesday, and just taking a break from that now after almost 3 years of performing weekly. But it's been fun and it's been a challenge. And as you said, I do take requests on the show, but I also would do a cover tune challenge where I would take a guitar-based song, flip it over to piano and put my spin on it. And I ended up finding out I generated a lot of new content, which just made my series of albums I haven't yet recorded and released grow even bigger. So now it's time to kind of focus back in on the recording and getting this music out to people.
Right. I had remembered right after I reviewed the first Land of Chocolate. I don't know exactly when it was. Your guitarist at the time, John Kovac, he came out to when I was living in Los Angeles, and you came out, and we had a lunch or a dinner and just talked for a while, and it was just kind of neat. That was the first time I had a musician friend, come out, and we go out for a meal. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, John Kovac is a great guy. Now, he was actually on the second album, not the first album.
Okay.
The first album included Brian O'Neill, who may be joining us in a little bit, on guitar, John Jens on bass, and Jordan Perlson on drums. Yeah. And then I moved to North Carolina in 2003 and assembled a whole new group of musicians around me for the second album, and that included John Kovac.
Oh, okay. Then that's a yeah. It looks like it both kind of. I mean, I don't know how far you moved from, but I moved across the country.
I moved from. I was in the Philadelphia area originally, so I got my musical start, I guess, singing in the Philadelphia Boys Choir as a kid. And so one of the things that was super interesting to me was part of why I like dense harmonies, part of why I like dissonance and the like, is when you're a kid and you're singing music, the stuff that is consonant and easy to digest, that's fun at first, but then a change would occur when you realized, after rehearsing this stuff for a while, you would prefer to sing something like Handel's Messiah over Take Me Out to the Ball Game, or more simpler stuff. So I think that was what got me started with more progressive elements in music.
Right. And then you were in that band, Finneus Gage, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That's correct. Yep. We released 2 albums in 1997 and 1999, and that was with my brother Chris,
Yes.
Scott McGill, and Chris Ike, and Laura Martin, who is now Laura Sterner. And we all still stay in touch with one another. But that had its time. And I look at that as kind of like a meteor where the music was just insane and absolutely amazing. And it served as a genesis for me to have the confidence to step out on my own, because when you're the youngest guy in an incredible band and you're surrounded by musicians who are just impeccable at playing, it really forces you to step up your game, but it builds your own confidence to realize, hey, you know what? Maybe I can do this.
Right.
And so I'd always fooled around with writing music, but the time came when Finneus Gage broke up that I was starting to write more music on keyboard, which was my original instrument. And Brian O'Neill and John Jens, who lived in Northern Virginia, contacted me asking to see if I might play drums for them. And I was like, well, I'm kind of focusing on keyboard and my own stuff right now, but if you're interested in that. So they came out for one weekend up to Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, and we ended up writing 3 songs in that first weekend. And next thing you know, we had an album together, and that came out in 2001 called Unicorn on the Cob.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and if memory serves, the Finneus Gage thing was in between the Echoin hiatus,
I mean, it was a full-fledged breakup. Let's be clear about it. But as life goes on, you realize sometimes the people that you have friction with, it's because you care that much. And over time, they were able to find their way back to one another, which is fantastic, because I know that Chris is wonderful friends with both Brett and Ray, who are the core members of Echoin at this point. So the similar thing happened with Brian O'Neill. We had our friction at times, and as time moved on, we have now come back together to work together, and he's laid down more than half the parts on this most recent Land of Chocolate album. So we have a combination of, I think, 7 tunes with Brian O'Neill on them and 5 tunes with John Kovacs on them.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Yeah. I think the bands with the more friction in it create the best music, because they're kind of pushing themselves. Whereas if you're all chummy with each other, you're not gonna, elevate each other to as high as you can go.
Exactly. And I will say that one of the things I do miss about having a band is it really pushes you outside of your own comfort zone. I know that some of my favorite tunes that I wrote or I co-wrote in Land of Chocolate were tunes where the original riff idea came from either Brian or John, and it basically triggered a switch in my head where I'm like, ooh, play that again. All right, I want to take that from here, and then it would turn into something else entirely different. So there is something to be said for what happens when you get in a room with other creative-minded individuals and the sparks that are created from those moments.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's where great music comes from, And,
couldn't agree more.
And I went over, I normally really don't use it, but I went over to Spotify just to listen to some of the songs, and it kind of reminded me of, when I first heard the CDs. And I was like going, in the world of everyone trying to copy, vocalists trying to copy either Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins, or John Anderson, those are the 3 main ones. You have a very unique voice, and to me, that's a welcoming thing, because you're not trying to be like anyone else. You're just being yourself, and I think that's a big issue with newer prog bands is they're trying to get more of an audience base by emulating their heroes instead of being themselves.
So I'll be frank with you. Like I've often said many times that there is progressive and there is regressive. And a lot of times when I've heard the word prog, I tend to associate that with wanting to emulate music that has already existed. And that tends to be more regressive in nature.
Right.
When I write, I have no plan to write anything that's complex. I really don't. I actually think every song I write is a pop ditty. I really do. And then I find out after the fact that no, it's really not mainstream after all.
Right.
But it's my own voice and it's what I come up with. And I don't think there's any way to be authentic and try to replicate somebody else.
That's my issue with a lot of the bands that are coming out today. That they're just, it's almost kind of like we can't be truly progressive like our heroes were. They were progressive. They were doing something completely different than anything that came before them.
Sure. And that's,
and
that, I
and
was going to
that's
say,
what,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
and I think that's what bands need to do now. I mean, test waters, and see if there's something out there that's just a different sound. Don't rest on the previous generation's laurel.
So if you look at the word or you break down the word progressive, it really means to progress. It means to try new territory. It's to go and do something a little bit different. And so I think as a term, progressive is a wonderful term.
Right.
Unfortunately, there is a overall public mindset that comes from prog rock that makes people think, oh, well, it's kind of, artsy fartsy. They're trying to do too much. They're trying to be complex for the sake of being complex.
Right.
I'll be straight. Like some of the best songwriters in the world, they're not progressive. In fact, what is surprising to me is I've come to really appreciate artists such as Tom Petty, who has used the same progression for both verse and chorus numerous times, but found ways to make it interesting.
Right.
And change the melody and layer stuff on top of it. So I mean, a song is a song is a song, and it's either a good song or it's not.
Right. Right.
And hopefully what I'm putting out there is good music that will stand the test of time.
That's all you can really do, honest. And me, as the older version, me looking back at the younger version, I was very much with that kind of like that tunnel vision where I'm only can listen to one style of music. Anything else is just getting in my way. And I did that various times in my life. And the past 20 years, I was like going, you know what? No. If it's not a progressive band, if it's a pop band, a rock band, a metal band, it doesn't matter. It's like, it was important to me when I first discovered it. So
Yes.
I need to rediscover it and see, did it stand the test of time? And for the most part, it's do.
Well, there's an interesting parallel you kind of bring up there, and I don't know if you meant to or not, but like how you focus upon music is very similar to how you end up having an open-minded worldview. You've got to expose yourself to different cultures. You've got to expose yourself to different places and different people. And that's going to give you a more well-rounded experience to draw from when it comes time to articulate your own voice.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's the one thing, listening to over the years, since 1980, when I actually kind of really cared about music. Before that, I always tell people I only listened to whatever my parents had on the car stereo. I didn't care about it, didn't mean anything to me. But then when I turned 14, it just all changed. It's like slowly got into whatever it is I was listening to, I was interested in. And it wasn't like some people like to use it as background music, just,
Yeah,
and it's like, no, I music is meant to be heard, not as a background thing. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, there's music today that is solely background music. I mean,
I would state that the majority of music that is being produced today is designed to be background because people have very busy lives and they stay active.
exactly.
But for the longest time, I have talked about active listening versus passive listening. Um, I'm an active listener. I loved nothing more than to buy an album and listen to it start to finish and just digest it, absorb it, feel it, go through that roller coaster of that emotion. And I think we've lost some of that. Unfortunately, we now live in a culture of 15-second TikTok videos and short
Yeah,
attention spans. But I'd like to believe the optimist in me likes to think that well designed and well written music will make a comeback. I look at television. Um, there is a renaissance of really well written and full television out there, and
right.
people digest it pretty heavily. So I'd like to think that that will also be the case eventually with music as well. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it's like, like you were saying about the short attention span. I noticed that started maybe 25 years ago. It just like slowly crept up, and then once the internet came on, it's like the problem I have with the internet, and it's the only problem, is it's too much everything going on at once. And it's like,
Sure.
and you have to pick what you want to watch or what you want to read and what stuff. And it makes it difficult to focus in on stuff. So I understand that part. But the thing is this, as difficult as it is to focus on stuff, I kind of think going back, it's easy to focus. I mean, it's easy
Abs-
to just jot everything down, pop. If you have a vinyl, put it on your player. If you have a CD, that's fine. If you have an iPod, put on your headphones and just zone out. Don't care about what's going on in the world while you listen to that 45 to 70-minute album. you know
I agree. I mean, so there's a great bit by a comedian named Aziz Ansari, who you might know from the show Parks and Recreation.
yeah,
But he had a comedic bit where he talked about how things used to be versus how they are now. And one of the things he would say is back in the day where we had rotary phones or like a normal phone instead of a cell phone, you'd be sitting at home, the phone would ring, you'd answer it. Bob, what's going on? Oh, what am I doing? Nothing. Yeah, I want to meet for a drink. Sure. And you'd go and you'd have a great time and you'd be in the moment and you would be happy you went. And today's modern world has so many options and so many choices that people are hesitant to commit to anything. And that goes with societal conventions. It goes with dating for people. And it also, I think, applies to music, where nobody wants to really focus in and invest the time that's necessary to read the good book, so to speak.
right.
Um, yeah, and that's kind of what it is. Is good music to me is like delving into a novel. You want to see it through, and the more that you read, the more that you understand how it folds back on itself. That plot devices, if you're talking about television or a book, reintroduce themselves in the same way that theme and variation occur within music songwriting.
Right. Yeah. I I listen to my primary way of listening to my music is on the headphones. That way I can get everything to me. Um, I don't mind being in a situation where there's speakers and like that, but I sometimes, for me personally, from the speaker to my ear is a longer distance than these are,
I
and
Well, you're immersing yourself. You are absolutely immersing yourself in the music when you have the cans on, so to speak.
yeah, yeah.
And I get it. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more now. Damn fine coffee.
Okay.
I like that name. That's
Do
a
you know where that's from? Do you know where the reference is from?
no, but
So there was a show that started in, I think, 1990. It was short-lived, but David Lynch and Mark Frost wrote a show called Twin Peaks.
oh yes,
And
okay,
the main protagonist in the show had a line where he was just so fixated on the joys of drinking a damn fine cup of coffee and having cherry pie. And it
okay,
just,
yeah. Now I
it,
remember.
so it always struck me as a fun little name. Land of Chocolate came from a Simpsons reference. I was a pop culture nerd. And so I like to pull names that I think are interesting to me. Phineas Gage was also the name I came up with from a psychology course I took in college. Phineas Gage was an actual person who had a tamping iron go through his head and survived, but he lost his ability to form new memories. So he would write everything down, kind of like the guy in Memento, if you know that movie.
Yes, yeah,
But it also, he ended up having severe personality changes, became far more short tempered. And I believe that his skull is still on display in a museum somewhere in the United States. But to me, it was just a fascinating way of recognizing how the human brain operates and what we need and what we don't need in order to
right.
function and think. So Damn Fine Coffee came about after John Kovacs took a teaching gig at the University of Rochester, and he still works there. I realized it was really tough to find myself a suitable replacement in North Carolina. But I wanted to keep writing music because I was still writing. So the drummer in the second Land of Chocolate iteration introduced me to a friend of his who was a bass player named Jason Rem. And same type of situation. We met up, we started writing some music together, and next thing you know, we had recorded a couple albums. And we played around a little bit, but same type of thing where life changed and people were moving in different directions. So I recall we recorded the final bass tracks off the second Damn Fine Coffee album in the final days before I was moving up to Richmond. So it was kind of a whirlwind where I had it together, that I cut the pieces and mixed it down. And that's when I had reconnected with Brian O'Neill, who helped me to master the album and put that out as well. So the music is more piano, bass, and drums. There is no guitar. And it's only because I couldn't find a suitable guitarist who A, could play the music, and B, had the dedication and drive to do so.
Right.
So, and then for the most recent Damn Fine Coffee album, I finished that up during the pandemic, and I ended up recording all the drum parts myself and laid down. I basically did all the music myself on that album. So that was a little bit of a stretch for me, and I had to shake off the rust of years of not playing drums. But I'm happy with how it turned out, and I have another 3 albums minimum that have been written already, that I am in the process of getting the 4th album finished in terms of the final tracks. And I hope to be able to send that over to Brian as well once we get the Land of Chocolate album released and off the plate once and for all.
Oh, cool, cool. Hey, I noticed during the pandemic there was two musicians. There was 2 types of musicians out there. One that just dived head on into just doing as many projects as they can, writing as much music as they can, and then there's others that just go, well, this is going to blow over, don't, we're not going to worry, and then 2 weeks turns to 2 months to 3 years, and it's like, uh I I think now that we have the CDC say that the pandemic is over, I'm I'm weary about that, but I'll trust it. I think that we're going to start seeing a lot of albums from bands that they probably written a lot of stuff, but shelved it until they were able to get their bands together.
Well, and that is part of the reason that I decided to press pause on the live streams for now, because it was something to do for my own emotional well-being, and also that I wanted to share that with people who might be stuck at home. But since things have opened up a bit more, I fully understand why people are less inclined to live virtually and want to reclaim their lives again. And so, you see more concerts, you see more shows that are out there, and people are getting back out there and living their lives, which is fantastic. But the downside is that I'm not somebody who likes to self-promote at all. I just can't stand it. But you know, the downside is that the audience that I had built over the first year and a half started to dissipate a little bit as more and more people had other things to do. So rather than invest that time into continuing to learn cover tune challenges and write an opener every week and all of that, I figured it's time to kind of play catch up on my end and all these tunes that I've written. And we're talking, I probably have another 6 albums worth of material that have not been released yet. And that's not even counting if I ever record some of these cover tune challenges. This is all the original music. So it's time for me to get off my horse and get moving on that front.
Right. Yeah. That's right. Since everybody, it's getting back to, I mean, I started this right around November 2020 because I knew all my musician friends were not touring or anything like that. So this was a way now I can get in touch with them. And I'm still getting a lot of people that are interested in doing this, and I think this is a great way. I mean, that anyone that either watches this live or watches it on when it's rebroadcast, they have something to go to. It's like they go, well, I know Jonn Buzby. Let's see what he had to talk about. If there's something that
Well,
we don't.
I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I'm enjoying myself because it's nice to have an intellectual discourse about music. And that is something that I appreciate, that we can talk about the music rather than just doing the performance. So I think that's important. And I think that those that are going to really want to delve into an artist and their work, they're going to want to know the person behind the work as well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I myself go on YouTube and watch a lot of interviews just to see what my favorite artists are doing. People um, that usually they haven't done any, and I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been a lot of interviews during the pandemic. Because it's so much easier. But one thing I noticed when you the Tuesday Tunes Day, I noticed that there was 2 of my other friends that were doing something similar on a piano, and one was doing like a one-man band type of thing, had the bass drum, and he was doing the guitar, and then had uh what do you call it, the pre-recorded keyboard parts going and everything. And then the one that I thought that was so interesting that he did that was that the drummer from Anthrax.
Oh, really?
He did
Nice.
he did a whole bunch of cover songs with he had different people record their parts and they put it together in a video and put it out. They called it lockdown cover tunes or something like that. And he released an album of all those things. And it's like, I mean, here's a guy that, he's synonymous with what is it, this thrash metal, the really fast drumming. and they do a cover of Right On.
Nice. Well, I
And
mean,
it came out of like left field, but then that's again like you kind of getting into his mind, and this is the music that he listens to, and he's trying to share that with people, saying, "Hey, there's more out there."
one of the artists that I incredibly appreciate is Foo Fighters, because
Yes,
they will go and they will take a song and perform it at a show, because they want to pay homage to what came before. And I think that's super cool. Like, I've come full circle on the idea of playing other people's music. I swore I would never play a cover tune ever. And then I realized there's a certain type of artistry, or it's almost like puzzle solving, to take a song that was never on piano and find a different approach to it and try to take the essence of the tune, but boil it down to something that you can perform as a one person artist. And so I've had a blast coming up with the stuff. It's just, I only have so much time to focus on everything. So I realized that it would take some time to develop what I wanted to do. But I covered a bunch of Rush tunes. I covered the Beastie Boys. I one of the last shows I did the Violent Femmes Blister in the Sun on piano.
right,
And I'm happy with how they turned out in terms of the arrangements. I'm not always happy with the performance because you only have so much time to perfect that before you go live if you're doing this every
right,
week. But to take something and kind of take a tune that you don't think there's any chance you could wrap your hands around and perform, and convert it into something that's it's not a carbon copy, it's not even close to it, but it still brings the song across. To me, that's the fun of it. And to try and get other people to guess, like name that tune,
right,
that's kind of
right.
fun too.
Oh yeah, I I'm kind of torn when it comes to cover tunes. Um, I don't really like to have the artist do a note for note. I
Exactly.
I like it when what you said, and I'll do it in a more simpler way, is you take the song how it was written, if you got the sheet music and whatnot, you break it down, throw away what they did, and you look at the sheet music and you do it how you would do it,
I
you
mean,
know?
one of the most blasphemous things I've ever done, and I still love that I did it, but I did While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and I wrote extra verses and a bridge that never existed within the song because that's where it felt it should go when I
Right.
translated it over to piano. Now, yeah, blasphemous as hell, I'm sure, but it was still fun and it was still something I enjoyed to do.
Yeah, you got that's the I think that's the whole point. You had fun doing it,
Yeah,
and you had people watching, and the few times that I tuned in, I was like going, this is a lot of fun. I mean,
thank
and I
you.
could and I can see on your face when you were playing and you're singing, you were just, it's like I'm just doing it, you know. If you're watching, great. If you're not, okay, that'll be, I'd rather you watch, but it's like you just went right in the moment and just did it.
I mean, you have to. You can only control your own actions in this life. And, I've played more than enough shows where you're basically playing for the bartender or the other bands. And you're still like, if you show that on your face that you are frustrated or disappointed, it's not going to do any good to your own
No,
performance.
no,
So
no.
you've got to love playing and you got to love doing it. And so hopefully that's come across. I'm not going to lie. There are many times that after I finished a show, I felt kind of a little dejected because I'm like, man, there was like nobody in here. There were only like a dozen people at most. And uh like, but then you realize, why are you doing this? Like, for if you have one or two people that care, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
And so I'm taking a break for now, but I plan on being back probably around September. Um, But for those that are interested in checking out any of my stuff, you can go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Land of Chocolate, and all of the past live streams are up there. And later on, if you want, I can certainly play a song from one of those live streams, as well as tunes from the upcoming Land of Chocolate album, if you'd like to hear them as well.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure that would be fantastic to hear. You know, especially the upcoming music, that people can kind of get a glimpse as to what's to come.
Sure. If you want, I will go ahead and play one of the tracks now. We're actually planning on finishing recording a music video for this song that will hopefully be out in the next few months as well. But this is from the newest Land of Chocolate album that will be out shortly. The album is called Your Finest Hour, and the track is called Air. Hopefully this works.
Another sunny day, say the voices in the hall. Each morning feels the same from this fabricated stall. Won't you please bring me some air? Promises and sand, stones left unturned. Amazing lives and land, riches left unburned. Just a life of laissez-faire. Wife and kids are well, according to her friends. If only I could tell, I'm too busy making ends to lift my head for remember. I remember knowing was something, there was something more. Life is what we make, a lesson long to learn. So focused on an end, discarding what I've yearned. It's all so crazy. Reach your dreams by making lots of bread. Eat those sweets. 6 figures worth will surely get you ahead.
Well, there you go. That's came through perfectly.
Cool. I'm glad it came through okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're very happy with how that turned out. And what's kind of crazy about this song and other songs within this album is these were drum parts, bass parts, and keyboard parts that were recorded probably in 2008, somewhere around then. So I had this kind of in the queue for a long, long time, but getting it finished and getting the guitar parts done was turned out to be a bit of a challenge. And thankfully, Brian O'Neill was able to help bring that across to the finish line for us.
Right.
So that is one of 12 tracks that will be off of the album Your Finest Hour.
Yeah. I mean, if that's any indication of how the rest of the album sounds, I mean, you got a win. You got a winner there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You know,
I'm very proud of this one.
it sounds to me, based when I went to listen back earlier to the first one, it just sounds like, you know, a bigger sound now. So
Part
you
of,
know,
I mean, part of that I have to give a lot of credit to Brian, because he has developed himself into an incredible engineer, incredible mixer, and has the ability to do mastering on the songs as well. But part of it's also just growing as a songwriter and as a performer. Is a lot of times you know how they say keep it simple, stupid, right?
right.
The kiss rule.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't want to do too much. Sometimes you just want to take that original concept, and you'll hear there's theme and variation in that song. You've got that little stagnant dung 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 that starts off, but that underlying bass line comes back within the tune later on, and there's definitely a lot of theme and variation in how that works.
Right.
So it came from a simple idea, but I think it's a very emotional song. And I'm looking forward to seeing the video that we are putting together for this, if we can see the vision through to its entirety and make that available for people to watch soon.
I think that's another great way of promoting an album nowadays, you know, is to make a music video. And now you can, almost anybody can make a music video.
Yeah, I mean, during the pandemic, first I went to Fiverr.com and paid somebody to create a music video for the title track, Your Finest Hour. And that turned out pretty well. And then I went back to the well to try and do a couple for Damn Fine Coffee, and I realized I was not enthralled with the work that was being sent to me. So I figured out from scratch just kind of how to do it myself. And there are free clips you can take and edit together, and there's free software you can use. And you know, it's not the same as having yourself in the video, but
Right.
I'm happy and proud of putting something out there for a couple of the tunes. And again, you can find those videos. I know we're going to try and show one of them on the show, but the lag might be a little too much to do that today. So I think audio might be the best
Yeah.
bet. But yeah, they're out there if you want to check them out at youtube.com/land of chocolate.
Yeah, you know, go over there and watch the Tuesday. You can watch the music videos, and you know, it's you know, YouTube, when it's done right, is a really good tool. You know, it really.
I agree. I mean, YouTube is definitely one of the better inventions of the internet world. Now, one of the less kind inventions is algorithms and hashtags and all of that, where you need to
Yeah,
figure out how to get seen in a world where everybody can put their stuff out there.
exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, you know that battle, and it's not an easy one. But
Oh
the
yeah,
best, yeah,
I've seen people that are using their, you know, iPhones and making music off of that, and I'm like thinking, wait a second, you know, it's like, I don't think it can be, you know. And so I went on I have an Android phone, and I went to some site, an app, download it, and I made a 30-second synth sound that's had very 80s vibe, like
Okay.
for a horror movie type soundtrack. And I'm like going, wow, that is kind of easy. Now if you had now you had to use your brain to create the stuff. You can make the sound, but I think the overall thing is you got to use here too.
Well, and that's the, I guess it's both the upside and the downside of being a musician in today's world. You can't just be a musician. You've got to figure out other ways to be creative in order to get yourself heard. But I have the Pixel Pro, and like I was fooling around with doing just video shooting. It is incredible. Like it is absolutely incredible the quality of what you can get image wise on your phones. It will blur the background for you. It will make it all cinematic for you.
Yeah,
It's disgusting.
it's it's amazing. And then but then I look at people such as yourself and many of the other musicians that I've spoke to over the years, that you've invested money into your musical instrument so that you can create your craft. And then here these people are just punching it on their their phone, and it's like,
It's
you
a
know
different world. Yeah, I took both of my nieces to go see a band called AJR, which I had never heard of, but they are very big. Um, and it was fascinating because this is the new generation of musicianship where they write their songs in GarageBand. They write their songs using loops. They don't really like, I don't even know if they were playing their instruments on stage. I really don't know.
right,
But they put on a good show and they used a lot of video in the background. And for what they're doing, you got to appreciate it. Like this is now, I guess it always was the case. Like music performance, the performance part is sometimes more important to the viewer than the music itself. You've
right,
had you've had the dance moves of artists that are popular, and you have choreography and you have the whole nine yards. I guess this is just the next evolution of that step where people are making songs using whatever tools are at their behest
right.
and putting it out there. So yeah, that's been the weirdest part about trying to get back into music full time again, is recognizing how much the industry has changed. It's like I feel like I came out of a time machine,
Yeah,
and I, I'm almost like I woke up 50 years in the future and I'm like, I don't know how this is done anymore. Um, because when I was doing Land of Chocolate back in the early 2000s, the whole idea was you were playing shows in order to sell your music. And now you almost need to give away the music in order to generate the interest in buying merch or swag. And that's how you make ends meet. It's
exactly.
it's reversed itself, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
how it
No,
goes. You got to just
I'm.
adjust.
I mean, your brother said something, and I don't remember the exact thing that he said. That he was talking to his students, and then he mentioned CDs, and then I don't remember the exact words, but the one of the students said, "What's a CD?" And when he told me that, I felt like, really,
Well, I mean, you
you know,
do have an entire wall of CDs behind you, Ron.
right?
So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I get it that the streaming things are convenience, but what I don't like about them is that people use them as their library.
true.
They, you
And
know,
you have people like the owners of Spotify who make more money than any of the artists do, and
exactly.
they haven't written a song. So it's
Yeah, it's like,
frustrating. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, someone I had to explain something about streaming to someone when it came to, let's say, movies. Now, I have over there, I have a wall, there's CDs, and there's movies over there. So, why are you buying movies? And I said, well, because I like to watch them. Well, you can watch them on streaming. And I said, yeah, I probably could, but something, what if their license runs out And that favorite movie of mine that I love to watch is gone.
Sure. And if
What do you
you're
do?
somebody, you might like to delve into deleted scenes or commentaries or special features. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I feel you, but I also think that is just a cultural thing where we grew up in a time where having the tangible object had true meaning to us. We wanted
Exactly.
to open the artwork. We wanted to read the liner notes. We wanted to put the CD in the CD holder and press
Right.
play. And
Exactly.
so for those that have grown up in a world where that's not the norm, it's just weird to them. And so I've given up trying to
It's
condemn anyone for digesting music the way that they do. Um, it's just
all
important that people still look for something new.
all I do is when they say something like that, I just kind of shake my head and throw up my arms like, okay, well, can't,
That's
it's like,
got a old man shaking fist, right?
yeah, it's like, but it's like you never thought you'd be in that position of being that old man shaking fist thing. But, you know, but our parents look at what we did in the same way that we look at the younger generation. So
Yep.
it's always going to be like that. There's going to be the time when those kids grow up, they have kids, and that they're going to go against what the parents are doing, and it's like, um, who knows? Maybe that would be someone's grandchildren. Maybe all this will come back, and they'll be
Maybe,
like
I mean,
fascinated with.
so style is cyclical, tastes are cyclical. It's possible that music will also be cyclical, but I do think that the way that we digest music will always continue moving forward. And
Oh yeah,
that's just how it is. You know what you like and you like what you know. And
exactly.
so whatever you grew up as your format, that's your format and you're probably going to stick with it.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah,
you know.
we're not that we're pretty intractable to change as we grow older, I've realized.
Well, I have quite a few friends that have, I mean, triple and quadruple the amount of what I have, and they've been selling it off and then just doing it digitally. And I could get that for space reasons, because you need if you someone that has like a 10,000 CD or 10,000 record collection, they're going to need a whole bedroom for that,
Yeah.
and basically turn it into a record store. You know, that's what they're gonna need to do. So if they don't have that ability, then I could see them going to digital. And
Imagine what it's like for an artist trying to decide how to release an album these days.
yes, I have quite a few people that I've spoken to, and quite a few that I've seen post on, uh, noticing, the decline in CD sales with them personally. I mean, I think it's all over the map. Some are declined, some have been staying about the same. But but for an independent artist, they need, if they're not generating enough demand for a CD, it's just easier if they just,
I've
go to a place like Bandcamp. And
I've got a garage full of coasters that anyone can help themselves to anytime they want. They have artwork with my bands on them, but they are essentially coasters that are sitting in a box because I tend to go for the value pricing. So I'll buy more CDs and press them as an optimist. But the recognition is that people just don't listen to CDs that much anymore. It's just what it is.
right.
So
I think it's more of the people that are the generation after us that are not really caring. I mean, there is a few of our generation that have completely gone digital, and that's cool. And then there's a bunch of people like myself that, when we get that CD in our hands, we're like going, it's almost like the Holy Grail,
yeah,
and
I'm I'm a big fan of the auto rip, buying the CD where it also gives you the digital, so you have both options in play.
yeah, exactly.
But I'm trying to enter the new world and failing miserably. Like I think I came to the realization that a 300 disc changer is probably what I am going with. Is I'll just put the discs and rotate them around and then get rid of all the cases and put them in the attic to save space. But it's just, it is what it is. Like I'm always going to be someone who likes stuff, and that's just the generation I'm in.
And we got Brian coming in.
Oh, sweet.
Hey there. Can you hear me?
I
Hey,
can
what's
hear
up,
you.
B?
There you
Now,
are.
see, now that's how a professional musician looks when they join an interview. Me, on the other hand, I've got window shades that are like askew from my cat. Like I'm barely holding together.
It's just a basement with a bunch of junk in it.
Yes, but it's junk that makes noise. And
It does. It does. Yes.
yeah. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you? It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
And Ron, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah, you've been telling me about, your guitar work and how you made the new Land of Chocolate bigger than the ones that were in the early part of the century.
Mhm.
It's kind of weird saying that, but
Well, the first one we did ourselves. We recorded the drums in Jordan's basement, if I remember correctly. But then
Yes.
we took it to Brad of Ekelin to finish it and mix it. The production side of things very similar to learning an instrument. The more you do it, the more you learn, the more you get better at it. And I still have a lot to learn, but I'm much better at it than I was when did the first one.
But that's the
20
key
years
to
ago,
it.
whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the key to it all, is to recognize that there's
Yeah.
always more to learn, and
Sure.
that's how you become better at something. So it's been amazing for me to have seen you show up that first time when we were recording, all up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And again, they were driving from Virginia to do this.
Up to Philly. Yeah.
Yeah. But you absorb so much information and just kind of, this is your thing. Like you are incredible at sound engineering and
It's
mixing.
something I like. So thank you.
Yeah. I am very happy that we reconnected and that you've been able to assist as you have.
Yeah. It's been fun.
well,
So
yeah,
we
like John was saying, that now that I guess the world is open again, you can be able to do the music a lot easier than fully remote. Some people, because I think while that's kind of convenient, it's also you lose some energy, because then you can't look across the room and see Brian over there, and Brian can't see you. All you're just doing your parts and then mailing them in.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some bands that's the only way they can do because of the longer distance.
Yeah. I
content.
mean, I think with John and I, with this particular new one, some of the stuff was written back when John and I were together with the first iteration of Land of Chocolate, right? I mean,
yeah.
some of it was written with the other guitarist, John, who I've met, very wonderful guy, super talented guy. I'm happy he's on half of this. That makes for an interesting thing. But I do hear what you're saying. Being in a room with people, bouncing ideas off each other in a live thing probably has its advantages.
Right.
But again, so this stuff was recorded, the drums, the keyboard, some of the vocals and stuff was recorded, most of it 15, 16 years ago. And
It's been a while.
he sent me the track. He sent me the tracks of what he had, and I just had to go in over top of it with some guitar stuff. And
Right.
So
And
we
then-
we
Go
already
ahead.
played Air, but I was going to see if you wanted to play Poison the Root as well, to give an idea of the guitar work that you put on the album.
You can play what you want to play. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody out there would like to hear that.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, Ron. I know you were about
no,
to ask
that's-
something. So
Well, no, I get the convenience of, you can send files back and forth. But if your band is in like close proximity, now you guys can get together, whereas during the pandemic you couldn't, even though you maybe live like 2 or 3 blocks away, you can't go see them. And so
I think we were always a pandemic band, even before there was a pandemic, because we've never lived in the same area, Brian and I.
Right. We've always been a couple 100 miles apart.
Yeah, it's when you think back to the genesis of the band and where we are now, it's kind of amazing that anything ever occurred at all.
Well, it's like you said, when I was watching you guys, you said earlier, there'd be John or I would come up with a part and you would just run with it. And you were very quick with that sort of thing. So I think that helped us.
Do you remember writing musical findings over the phone?
I do.
You had that original lick that doo 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 doo. I'm like, wait, play it again.
Yeah, but add this, yeah.
Yeah. No, and we've realized now the differences between how I write and how Brian writes. And I think we've come to embrace the strengths that we bring to the table while also being more cognizant of what the other person does and giving them the space to do what they want and what they need to do without like cutting one another off. Because I think that's where we had trouble in the past.
Well, I think you have to if you're playing with other musicians. I mean, it's just the way it is.
I've learned how to play well with others.
I've gotten a little better at it myself.
Yeah. But along the same lines as I spoke about with Chris and his Ekelin bandmates, like I consider Brian a really good friend at this point, and that's more important really than the music part. And it's funny how that works when you go from people you don't really know and you're trying to learn and you're trying to figure out how to sync up with them. And then over time, you realize you've built, a family of sorts. And that's the cool part is I have a few people that I no longer even play with, but I'm still friends with. And that really is the most important component of life when it comes down to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, while it was music that first brought people together in these instances, I mean, you're right. There's no reason you can't continue those relationships on unless
they go crazy. Cray. All right, well, let me play Poison the Root for you, Ron, if that's okay.
Go ahead. All
right, let's see if I can get this one to work as well. It should be playing.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's just it. We've hit the lag. This is just to kind of build the suspense for you.
Right.
It's actually our version of 4 minutes and 33 seconds where we just sit and do nothing.
Right.
Come on. You can do it, buddy. Well, it'll play eventually. Feel free to continue to fill the void of conversation until it does start.
Yeah, I was mentioning, you probably were listening earlier that there's a lot of these bands nowadays that they kind of rest on the laurels of their heroes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rather than creating their own voice, whether vocals or guitar, and I really like when someone kind of breaks out. There we go.
Here we go. Sorry about that. Hold that thought.
We're dissolving and evolving what to do. No dissolving, this revolving all the We invest in something new. Less congestion. It's the best that we can choose. I see the tide inside us, now for greater truth. It's up to us to try it. Boys in the I see the tide inside us, now for greater truth. It's up to us to try it. Boys in the wood.
So that little bit, that little woo that you do during that quiet part, Brian. Oh my gosh. Every time it kills me.
You lost me.
You do kind of a harmonic during that when it opens up. It's find a way
Oh.
to.
Right. It's yeah, it's a pinch harmonic thing, yeah.
So one of the things I gotta give ultimate credit for Brian for what he did here for these parts. He's taken songs that he was just given the song, the framework, without really much guidance up front, and was able to craft just some amazing parts that elevate the tune to a whole nother level. So there's one thing to be part of the process when you're working together on a song. It's another thing entirely to basically be like, here's the song, dude, what you got? So I got to give ultimate credit to you for what you've done on these tunes, Brian.
Thank you. That particular one actually had a John Kovacs recording of it. And,
I was trying to give you more credit.
well, I took some of what he did and I made some of that my own. But yeah, there were some songs had no guitar parts at all. So yeah, you're right. It just had to come up with them.
Do you find that's more difficult to take a song that's already crafted and come up with parts over top, or is it harder to be in the moment and write when a song is being started from the ground up?
No, I think as long as you already like, as long as it's something that you feel you can contribute to, it's probably easier to write with a more blank slate. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's probably easier to take someone else's idea, depending on levels of playing. I can't play everything John Kovacs can play, and I'm sure vice versa. But I think it's easier to have a blank slate and really make something your own.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that's the same. I'm trying to think back to years where I would sit in with other bands, and there's less pressure necessarily because it's not really your thing up front. But yeah. it becomes your thing once you start to come up with your own ideas and implement them.
Sure. Once you get comfortable with the parts, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I'm absolutely floored on my end about how this album flows,
Yeah, like I was
despite
saying,
the fact, that
after
there's
the
two different
first song,
guitarists.
yeah, I like the, you know, as I said with the first song you played, Air, it you got 2 for 2 right now. So again, so that's a good thing because that's, sometimes people will get like one or the other, but you got when you got two strong, very strong songs,
Yeah.
that kind of gives you the idea of how the rest of the album is going to be, song wise, not necessarily same thing, but just that elevation of, you went from on the first album from here, now here you're up here because you're just able to push it up and how do you say close in the quiet parts in a way, you kind of gave it a more of a wall of sound type of a thing, and I mean both things are great, if done right, and but a
I think
wall of
we've
sound.
I think we've learned the quality that comes from space. That when I would write songs way back when, it was always nonstop. There was a wall of sound. And I still love the music, but I can recognize now that sometimes you need to allow things to breathe and dynamics are important.
Yeah.
And so I think that is one thing that you've actually brought to the table as well, Brian, that I've learned is, how to get the mood, get that mood right and open it up and let it breathe. And I still remember thinking back to when I was at your house in Virginia and we were writing Unicorn on the Cob, the title track. And we had this whole driving section from the beginning at do 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 do. And both you and John were like, dude, we need a spot for it to open. Like it's too
Well, there's no rules, as one knows. You can have an entire song that's just, banging start to finish. You can have an entire song that's a ballad, but if all 10 songs on an album or whatever the number is are the same, you'll probably lose me at some point.
Sure.
Right.
And for better or for worse, I still think in album form. So when I write music or when we write music, and hopefully other people are still doing the same thing.
Right.
I don't want to create an album that's a disparate collection of songs. I want to have something that has an overall message, has an overall feel, and takes you on a journey.
Exactly. That's the number one thing that I love about some of the albums that I've listened to in the past is once you put it on, whether you're a vinyl person or a CD person, the minute you put that song and hit the play button, it's like, if that whole album can take you on a journey, regardless of what the message is, but it can take you on a, maybe a spiritual journey because, you're becoming one with the music, and whether you get the message through the vocals or you get the message through the the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's both ways you can, and that's, to me, that's what makes a really, really, really good album is something that does that for you, where you can go on the journey with the vocalist, and then at the same time you go on the journey with the musicians. You're hearing everything,
And in a perfect world, you go on that journey one time through with the vocalist, and then the minute that last song ends, you want to go back through the journey again, but you want to hear something else. And that to me is that's the highest compliment I can give an album, is when that final track finishes, when I'm like, I gotta listen to it again. I need to hit play again.
And an amazing thing, and I love when it happens, is like you listen to the album again and you hear something else,
Oh yeah.
something you didn't think you heard the first time, and all of a sudden, oh wait a second, I didn't remember this part, but it's like, I think that's the wonderful thing about this genre of music that you guys play, is you're not just doing straightforward, which I got nothing against bands that do that, but if the song is kind of, where it's going, by the time you're done with it, you shelve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas bands that, such as your band, create music, it's like you want to listen to it again, because it's like, no. I don't know how many minutes the album's going to be, but let's say, I'll just put
It's pretty long.
Let's say 60 or 75 minutes. When you're done with that, it's like, wait a sec, wait, I kind of feel cheated. Let's go start that over again. It's like,
That's the hope of what we've accomplished with this, and we'll see. We'll see how audiences receive it. But I know that both Brian and I are extremely proud of how this has come out, and we've listened to these tracks far too many times.
Oh yeah.
In order to get these, but they still feel fresh to me, at least. And that's a good thing. That I'm not sitting there going, I can't listen to this album again in the next 5 years.
right.
Oh sure.
Yeah. So
There's been quite a few albums that I've purchased over the years that I listened to one and it's done, and I noticed that there's like, after a few years, there's like a layer of dust on them, and I'm like going, well, I think there's a reason why there's dust on it. I didn't really thoroughly enjoy it, even though if it was like a really popular album, if you don't feel it, you don't get the feel off of it, it's not for you.
I've had the reverse happen though. Sometimes I'll buy an album and not like it, and then I'll hear like a clip of it somewhere else later and put it back on and like, wow, this is really good. And I think that's just maybe a maturity, or
it's also where you're at in that moment in time when you're
Sure.
listening to something. I remember the perfect example for me was Jeff Buckley's Grace, which
Yeah,
is a
that's what-
freaking
same.
fantastic album. It's beautiful, start to finish. I was not in the mindset to listen to it when I first popped it in, and I took it out. It was, my brother had dubbed it on cassette tape. That's how long ago it was. And he had the Vinnie Colaiuta album on the backside of it, and I immediately gravitated more towards the Vinnie stuff. And I was
Really?
looking around, and for whatever reason, maybe it was just the fact that it was kind of like ambient and open at the beginning of Grace. I was just like, I'm not really feeling this right now. And I was looking around on the floor of my messy ass car and saw the tape. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a second shot. And in that moment, I was
clicked.
done. Yeah, it absolutely clicked.
That's a great example. Was I had the same reaction to that album. Well, I came from a heavier, more straightforward background in terms of the music that I liked. Even Eklund, I remember going, my buddy John Jens, our bass player from the first one, maybe go see Eklund, and I went, and it's like, I was into Dream Theater and Fates Warning and that sort of thing.
Right,
It just
right.
did not connect with me. And same thing with Buckley. It's like John saying, starts off very ambient stuff, but I went back to that. It's brilliant, really brilliant. His voice is incredible.
To me, those are the best albums, because if you don't get it the first time, you get it the second time, and then all of a sudden, when the third time, you're hearing more, and each time you listen to it, more and more, and it becomes like, for you personally, the perfect album.
I think my theory for that is because it doesn't sound like anything. You're not familiar with it. So the first time you listen to it, you're like, I don't know about this. If it's something very familiar to you, you may like it straight away.
I mean, I told John earlier, I said, my younger version of myself in my 20s, I went through different phases of music, and if it didn't fall in that area, everything was, I didn't care about anything else.
Yeah.
I went through, in the mid 80s, I went through a thrash metal stage, and then in the early 90s, got into the progressive rock stuff. So I pushed the thrash metal aside and just focused on the progressive rock,
Mhm.
and kept on buying stuff blindly, which, you know, a majority of the stuff you go blind. It's like you listen to it the first time and it's like you shelve it. And there was a lot of that stuff that, you know, I got rid of. You know,
Yeah.
I traded one and say, hey, I got this. What do you got? You know, that's, you know, comparable, you know, in trade wise. You know, it's like that was a big thing back in the early 2000s, is trading CDs,
Oh yeah.
you know. And I mean, that's also a great way to, you know, before, you know, now we got Spotify to discover things, and YouTube, you know,
Yep.
and Amazon Music, like, you know, you were talking about earlier,
Apple Music.
Apple Music.
Yeah.
I mean, all these different ways that you can discover music. If someone gives you a recommendation, it's like, okay, I trust them, but I got to verify if that's real, if they really, you know, maybe they like it and they say, oh, yeah, you know, you should try it. And then if you listen to it, you know, you got to listen to it first and see if, okay, maybe are they right or are they wrong? And not wrong in the sense that their taste wrong. It's just that they possibly just recommended the wrong album to you.
Yeah. Everyone has
And
different tastes. Everyone connects with something for different reasons. It's you know, I'm in another band. We won't mention it too much, but the guys in that band are constantly giving me recommendations of stuff to listen to, and I'd say the hit or miss ratio is more miss than hits. But
I'm gonna
every once in a while, you know, I'll get something to come. Okay, I actually like this.
I'm gonna quickly plug Brian's band because he's too modest to do so, but he has a band called Ephemeral Sun, and they make some really killer music that is well worth checking out.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
and you got someone that's in the chat, Kevin Feely, that says hi.
Hey, Kevin, how are you, buddy?
Let's see if he's respond. Sometimes I don't really pay attention to the chat because it's, you know, multitasking type of thing.
Sure.
I wish the chat for me was a little bit bigger on my screen.
Be careful what you wish for, Rod, because when I was doing Tuesday and something would come up on my screen in my peripheral vision, it was the surest fire way to screw me up and have me hit a wrong note or sing a wrong note.
Oh, you were doing that either way.
That's valid points.
I'm kidding.
Valid
I'm
point.
joking.
He's not wrong.
It's
but
normal.
Yeah, I'll go back to Ron, what you were talking about. I like to call that kind of popping a quarter in the musical gumball machine, where you would go to a store and just like you'd pick out random CDs. I used to love going to thrift stores and picking out stuff for $1, and I would just take a whole bunch of CDs home, and a bunch would be misses, but some would be these unsuspecting massive hits for me. And the funny one for me was there was a band called Thin Lizard Dawn, and my crocodile head was like, wait, I think somebody told me I'd need to check them out, but I was thinking about Thin Lizzy.
Thin Lizzy, yeah.
Right. Now, I don't like Thin Lizzy really at all, but Thin Lizard Dawn, man, they were freaking fantastic. So sometimes you just get lucky. But it is it's tougher because you can find new music because of recommendations, but are the recommendations actually going to be as catered to you, or are they going to be more based upon the algorithms that are catered to everyone? And
right.
So that's the downside. Like I used to CMJ, College Music Journal, they used to put out a monthly magazine with a CD inside. I never read the magazine, but I'd pop in that CD, and that's how I found out about Elliott Smith. It's how I found out about Self. It's how I found out about Pinback. It's how I found out about a bunch of bands that are now part of my regular diet of music when I listen.
Yeah.
And part of that's just like, you've got to be willing to take chances and sort through the proverbial crap in order to find that unshine diamond, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure people do that anymore as much.
Mm, our generation, I think, does it more than the newer one. I think, but with some few exceptions that I've noticed, people on Facebook kind of, they're like, I can't, if it doesn't hit me, I'm not going to even bother.
Mhm.
And sometimes you got to give things a little bit of a chance.
Well, I will say a couple things that give me hope for the future is when we were recording the second Land of Chocolate album at UNC Chapel Hill, several of John Kovach's students would come in and they would be like, hey, have you heard this band or have you heard this band? And this was stuff that was old. They were tired of what music was being fed down their throats and they were searching for new music. And then likewise, there are those little victories that occur when my nieces, who are teenagers, will be like, oh yeah, I've been listening to this. And you're like, wait, I know who this is and I love them. How did you
Right.
find? So they're still searching. It's just a
Yeah.
little harder to sort through everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot more available for sure. I've got 3 kids and their tastes are pretty diverse. But I mean, they've also had to listen to all the crap I listen to all the time, and they listen to the popular stuff. So,
Have you had any musical victories with your kids where they totally locked on to something you love?
maybe not per se an album or so, but yeah, there's songs for sure. Yeah,
Nice.
all 3 of them.
That's cool. If you have kids that you can share your music, and and you cross your fingers hoping, okay, they're going to get it.
Hmm.
That even if on a basic level, if they get it,
Yeah. Well, some of it's really shoved down their throats because we'll rehearse here, and it's hard to get away from live drums and the volumes that are needed to match that sort of thing. So
right.
Well, I imagine that's part of the trick is you got to almost be super cool about it. Be like, oh yeah, we're just, and then when they ask, what are we listening to? You're like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll hear them humming stuff every once in a while. Ah, it's not terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty funny.
So my question for you guys is, when does this new album come out?
Hopefully soon. We have a couple things to finish. One is the artwork that we thought we had done, but we apparently do not. So that is something I need to take ownership of and run with. And I have admittedly been failing on that the last few weeks. And then the second thing we need to do, which should not take long, is taking all of these mixed and mastered tunes and threading them so that we have the time and the space and cutting the tracks, placing the points on the tunes themselves. But we realize, or at least this is how I am justifying it, this album was written like 18 years ago.
It doesn't need to take any more time though.
It doesn't, but I
joking.
also would like to do the requisite steps to make sure it gets heard. And that involves going on shows like yours, Ron, and creating music videos and trying to at least do something to create an awareness that we still exist. We still have music and there could be more to come as well. So that takes doing things in a certain order. And I would like to say that it will be out hopefully before September. But I'd like for it to be sooner than that if we can get our ducks in a row.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the mixing, the mastering, the recording, all that stuff's done. As you said, I think there's a few fades and stuff that were added at an end of a tune or two, but otherwise it's the artwork and deciding which avenues to release it. Do we do CD? Probably, but as we all know, that's not really done much anymore. And
I'm sorry, I'm not investing in vinyl. I don't care what everyone.
Well, it's funny.
I know.
It's funny you guys mentioned earlier, Chris mentioning a CD and somebody not knowing what a CD is, but they know what vinyl is.
Right.
Because that's back. It's strange.
That's
it's really strange.
behind us. That's behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that there's a lot of people, whenever someone advertises their new CD coming out, it's going to be vinyl. You know,
That's what the cool kids do.
right?
I think it's more about the packaging than the actual sound quality and stuff. It's that big,
Well, someone told me this, and I don't know if it's a true statement or just their experience, that anything that was put on vinyl before the invention of the CD sounds much better than vinyl that's produced after the invention of the CD. I don't know if that's a true statement, but it kind of makes me kind of wonder if that, where they were coming from when they mentioned that, because
it's personal preference for,
yeah,
in the technical sense, CD has a lot more bandwidth from lows to highs and, dynamic range. It is true though that you do master audio very differently for vinyl. So if we were going to release vinyl, it would have to be mastered with the idea, okay, it's just going to be cut to vinyl. This is the dynamic range isn't the same. So
And
you technically make it quieter.
this is why I go to Brian for anything that is sound related.
I've never mastered anything for vinyl. I just know that there's a very different approach to it. So if you're releasing to CD digital or digital stuff, then yeah, you do what we're doing.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the reality is we'd like to think that we have a large audience. We don't. We're small potatoes. But
it's a million sellers, a million in my cellar.
yeah, so the reality is whatever way we go about putting this out there, we just need to kind of do it and get it over with.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it would be nice to get additional ears and some reviews and the whole 9 yards.
Exactly.
But what we really need are people that are going to be advocates for us. That's how this music grows.
Right.
Need people to talk about it, make others aware of it. It doesn't do any good really coming from myself or from
Right.
Brian. We need to find people who are fans of this and
Exactly.
do the same thing you were talking about, which is, dude, you got to check this out. And then hope it catches on that way.
I've seen, nowadays, with the streaming situations, I forget what band it was, but they said for the first month of sales, they only did it physical media. That way they can get as much of that out into the world as they can, because they know once they put it on Spotify, people, especially younger generation, are going to use Spotify as their library.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong. I use Spotify only to discover something, and the minute I discover it, I listen to the CD, and for convenience, I'll go back and listen to it on Spotify, or the other two that I use, YouTube and Amazon Music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use those as my library. Those are just a convenience, an extension of my library.
Yeah.
I also think you're finally attuned to the fact that it's hard work being a musician, and that there's not a lot of money that's being made by musicians, especially in this industry, this specific genre. So you've got a conscience about it, which is great. And it would be wonderful if more people did.
Well, that in a streaming service, you don't own that. That stuff behind you, Ron. You own that. That's yours.
Yes, exactly. That's, and then like I told John earlier, I got a wall, kind of a wall full of movies. It's the idea of owning the product is something that our generation, that's what we grew up on. You going down to that record store and thumbing through the records, and then later the CDs, and looking at the artwork, and then opening it up if it's a used copy, opening it up and looking on the inner sleeves and everything. It's like a discovery right there. I mean, I think that was our Google, that was our Google, we got to, and then a couple people down from you to either side, they're looking at stuff. and then you kind of peek over and see what are they looking at,
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing I miss about record stores, is that you have that feeling. I mean, there's still some out there. I mean, there's few and far between,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it's pretty rare.
There's an element of choice that I think also comes into play, where it's very easy to just go down a rabbit hole with listening to stuff and letting it lead you to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and you're not necessarily deciding as much as you are just, oh, what's this that's being placed in front of me? I think the
Exactly.
same thing. Yeah, same thing occurs with, if I were to flip on my television and there's a movie on, am I really making a choice to watch that movie, or am I just being sucked in by the movie that's being presented to me?
Right,
Um,
right.
So having that physical media in front of you and being able to choose, hey, I want to listen to this album right now, there's something that comes from that as well.
Oh yeah, just the idea of going right behind you, going, I'll pick that. I'm gonna put it in my CD player and take 60 minutes away from the world.
Mhm.
That's just the greatest feeling in the world for me. And to kind of get, I mean, and also too, and I did mention this to your brother, that music is very healing. It it helps, with your mind and your soul, kind of get them back into something, where you're more focused. And that's what, music does that for me. It just keeps me focused, keeps me noticing what's out there, what's good, not really dwelling in the bad times, because you dwell in the bad times, you might as well just give up.
Well, I'll tell you, Ron, it's the same thing for me on the writing end. That is my release. That is my processing of when something is disturbing me or bothering me, or when I'm frustrated or disappointed or whatever it may be. I can always go and sit down, and whatever emotions I can't articulate in words start to pour out of me with an instrument. And so music is, I've always believed that it's a language that can't be quantified easily. There are words and there are lyrics, but there's emotion that goes beyond that.
Oh,
Sure.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, well, I want to thank you for having us on here
Oh
today.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
had a blast, talking with you guys, and kind of getting, I mentioned to John that I had met John Covet. Came out when I was living in the West Coast. Came out there, and it was just kind of nice just to meet someone that had my similar tastes in music. And
I've met him once. Super nice guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not had a chance to talk to him since, but yeah, through social media and such, I have. But
right. But yeah, it was a blast talking with you and getting to hear those two songs. I can't wait to hear the rest of the album.
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so
you
much,
might
Ron.
get to hear it before everyone else does.
Well, and if you'd like, we can certainly, I don't think I'll be able to pull the video up because of the lagging aspect, but I can certainly have you play out with the title track of the tune if you'd like. That's on you. Otherwise, we'll send you some more music to start digesting before the album gets released. So
Yeah, well, any of the videos you can send me privately, and I can put the link in the description below so people can find it easier.
That works. Well, thank you so much for taking your valuable time out to spend with us.
Oh, thank you for taking your time out. I really truly appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
And when the album's done, if you guys like to come back, you guys are more than welcome.
Anytime, Ron. We'd be very happy to come join you
Absolutely.
and spend some more time with you.
All right. Well, I thank you again, and I'll be talking to you guys soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care, Ron.